So thank you for both the speakers for giving us a very deep and engaged context for understanding caste. I had a quick question for either of the speakers, but it takes off from where Aditya left off. He briefly mentioned something about intentionality, and it's definitely a debilitating thing to face when we enter the realm of deciding whether something is a hate crime. And I like the distinction that Aditya asked us to make between the three levels of caste. One is about visible violence, and one is more structural violence, institutional discrimination. But the third one is where the series is focused on everyday life practices. And the third is obviously the largest subset. But the question is, within the Cisco case, could either of you, because both of you are practicing lawyers, could either of you tell us a little bit about how intentionality may or may not come as some form of a hurdle to cross in order to prove that discrimination occurs? Thank you.
Jagdish sir, do you want to go first, or I'll leave it to you?
You answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhargavi sir. So yes, I think intentionality has. So let's deal with it first from just pure criminal law. The standard in criminal law is that everything that you allege, you need to prove. There is an exception made when the kind of crime that you're complaining about falls within a protected class. So in India, ideally, caste should be a protected class. In the US, race is a protected class. Sexuality in the US is now a protected class. Gender is a protected class. It really comes down to whether caste will finally be viewed as a protected class or not. Because if it is, then any crime, any act that is directed towards exploiting either your superiority in caste terms or penalizing someone else's historic circumstance in caste terms becomes implied. That is to say, the fact that you used caste as a basis to go forward and do something, to out someone, to use a caste slur, to use it as the basis to make a decision, to deny a promotion, to give someone a promotion, the presumption is that you were trying to be discriminatory on the basis of caste. So it is, in my understanding, intention will become a problem. But if we can argue and show that it is a protected class, then the next step of the argument will be that there must be a presumption, irrespective of whether it's being proved. Because it is very difficult. And I'll just give you one example. There was one, this is anecdotal. I had a case that came from Mandya district in Karnataka, where my client was a Dalit and he had gone for a haircut. The barber took him in, but shaved his head halfway. So in the sense, he said, I'll give you a haircut, shaved his, like left him half bald and kicked him out of the shop. And later when he went and gave a complaint in the police station, later at night, a group of the oppressing class caste members went to his house, beat up his old dad and my client. When we asked for a complaint to be registered, the modus operandi is to call for, the police themselves call for a complaint from the opposite side, saying you also register a complaint, saying that there was some altercation. And this trope, this has become a method by which the police show that this was not a caste crime. They had some other personal enmity. And this has become a pattern because in at least, if I, from the top of my head, 10 cases that I've personally been involved in one form or the other, I've seen this in at least 8 of them, where every crime, every act that has come closer very clearly has caste overtones and very clearly is casteist, is diluted by bringing in this question, this doubt as to intentionality. And to answer your question in one line, I would argue that the moment caste is a protected class, the presumption should be that it was intentional. Because if it was not intentional, the caste would not come up.
Thank you.
So Jagdishar, do you like to add something to it?
Yeah, definitely, sir. The caste in India is a protected class. What they will do is, because of the inheritance of the caste by the vernacular system, as I already said, the persons who are holding the post in a public office, they are eager to protect their interest rather than the interest of the untouchables or an SC/STs. What will happen is, as already said, their forefathers will bias against the SC/ST. What best we can expect from their offsprings? Invariably, there are some exception officers where they do not go by the caste. They go by only the cause and not the caste. Caste has no relevance at all. In most of the cases in the police department, as my friend has already said, though there is a provision under Prevention of the Atrocities Act, any persons who does not, any public servant who act contrary to the interest of the SC/STs are liable for penal consequences. Unfortunately, their forefathers, when we lodge a complaint to the forefather that their superior officers, they rather, instead of acting on them, they provoke the general category candidates in order to dilute the SC/STs cases, bringing them on a different platform, saying that there was an altercation not with reference to the caste because of something. Most of the prevention of the atrocities cases are diluted because the cases which are argued on behalf of the prosecutions, I was often arguing before the court of law in a very harsh languages. The reservation for the SC/STs are kindly excuse for me to use this word because I use the same language before the court of law. Nobody has questioned me and nobody has raised a finger against me. The SC/STs problems are like a gynecology problems. These cases are dealt by veterinary doctors. What would be the consequence? A person who doesn't know the pain of the sufferings, if you allowed to argue, this would be the consequence. If when a public prosecutor is there, if his officers who was in an investigation office, they are not properly conducted in a prosecution, they will never rise up their head and say that, look, my officers have committed a blunder. Instead of doing the wonder in this case, they will be hand in glove with the accused and see that the cases are diluted. If the SC/ST persons are appointed to defend the cases of such nature, definitely they will bring it to the notice of the court and say, this erring officer is responsible for all this episode. Look at the Best Bakeries case, what the Supreme Court has said. There are evidence to show that. Classic examples of evidence are there. Supreme Court has directed, let the Best Bakery cases be conducted, a fresh inquiry be conducted. Sometime there will be the people will be hostile. These cases are be dealt because of the persons who are holding the post, as he will be having a caste interest rather than the cause interest. I would like to say. Sometimes, in added to this, in a country like India, the discretionary power which has been given to the officers, with boldly, without any hesitation, I can say, these discretionary powers are always exercised in a discriminatory manner against the SC/STs. Why? Because they got a discretionary power. This discretionary power, not with the harmonious to the constitution, what the rights has been guaranteed to the SC/STs are not used. Often it is used in otherwise. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so next we have Kavit. Before that, sir, you told that quoted Ambedkar, it is the Hindu religious right to practice untouchability, which is very powerful. What
Yes.
is second one? Not practicing is a sick, S-I-C-K, you mean?
Oh, sin. Not practicing untouchability is Hindus' religious sin. What Baba Sahib Ambedkar had said.
Oh, yeah. So we have many sinners with us.
Yeah.
And there are some two people who came, very holy people, and made some disturbances. And yeah, thank you. I never heard that one. Kavit,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. My question was to either of the panel speakers that the Pune Pact or Pune Act of 1932, is it possible, maybe I'm being a little idealistic, that if that was overturned, the entire setup, what you have in India today, which is the bulk of the non-Hindus who are now being co-opted legally under Hinduism, that would be completely reversed. So is there any thoughts on how and what would happen if the Pune Pact was reversed and what the impact would be? That's my question. Thank you.
Pune Pact, what Baba Sahib Ambedkar has did, we are not asking you to reverse the Pune Pact. Pune Pact, it is in a opposite of Baba Sahib Ambedkar's second roundtable conference speech which he has addressed. And he has called upon Simon to visit India to look at the socio-economic status of these untouchables, how the people are treated worse than animals in India. After Simon Commission only the Pune Pact has emerged, as all of you are aware. In Pune Pact, some of the conditions were there where there was no lands for the purpose of cultivating for the untouchables. Pune Pact has provided land to be distributed to the SC/STs. Reservation in appointment has to be given to the SC/STs people because either the post of the government service in the central or states are occupied by one or two communities, and it was not equally distributed to the other communities people. Particularly the untouchables were not having any legitimate share in the government appointment. Pune Pact was the offshoot of this. Apart from this, why the Pune Pact is dangerous? Because for one reason, Baba Sahib Ambedkar insisted to have a separate electorate. Why the separate electorate? Baba Sahib Ambedkar intention was, if our community people are elected from our own community people, if he goes there as an parliamentarian, if he does not redress our grievances in the parliament, next election he will be pulled down. Our people will not going to vote. Therefore, Ambedkar intention was, a persons who are elected from our community should ventilate our grievances in the parliament to highlight and to find out a solution for that. In Pune Pact, that is not there. Now our leaders have been elected. So many things are going against the interest of the SC/STs. For your kind information, sir, our politicians are a mute spectators in the parliament because they are eager in retaining their chair rather than protecting the interest of the SC/STs. One classic example so happened in our Karnataka, Kambalpalli issues, where about 8 Dalits were burnt alive. 8 Dalits were burnt alive for a petty quarrel. Why our parliamentarian, our legislature did not raise the voice? Is it not a violation of a human right? On a petty quarrel, there should have been a solution to find out ways and means. Whether the caste Hindus have got a lesson to learn us. Look at the plight. Therefore, we are not asking to reverse the Pune Pact. We are asking the lacuna found out in the Pune Pact. Thank you.
So Aditya, you want to reflect or?
I think we've covered a lot of ground there. And the only interesting contrast I want to point out was that finally the giving up on the dilemma in Ambedkar's mind in the Pune Pact was whether you have the rights of the depressed communities, as he used the term then, protected, or you sacrifice Gandhi, because Gandhi had gone on his fast unto death. And the irony of that incident, standing from where we are today, is that a caste Hindu was willing to even die than ensure that the depressed communities had their due representation in parliament. And the leader of the depressed communities was willing for Gandhi to live. And Gandhi's followers today will make sure that that electorate never comes back again, because that will take a constitutional amendment. The irony is very pithy.
Thank you, Aditya. Yeah, Ambedkar writes in what the Gandhi and the Congress Hindus took the Jews and left the rinse to the depressed class. That's what Ambedkar writes. And we have Suresh Kumar and Nitin. Suresh Kumar, you would like to ask a question? So, Aditya, do you have a question from Suresh, or can you?
I had one comment is that almost every party is praising, worshipping Dr. B.R. Ambedkar for vote banks. However, none of them talk about separate electorate that Dr. Ambedkar demanded and broken-heartedly withdrew from that. Is there any progressive proposal around the judiciary and law council as a solution on the annihilation of caste? Uh, the short answer from the direction that we've seen most of our institutions take is sadly no. Rather, there is a drift away from it. In fact, I was looking at whether there's ever been a proposal to introduce reservations for positions from the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in the higher judiciary, that is in the high courts and the Supreme Court. Even before a proposal can be made, each of those attempts have been nipped in the bud. So even the conversation has not started. And the last time we had an SC judge, we have one right now, very recently appointed, but the last time we had one was a decade back, Justice KG Balakrishnan. And in some sense, around that time, even his appointment was treated like a poster child for the cause. And right there, the question of any reservation was stopped, saying that anyway SCs and STs are being appointed. Why do we need a reservation? Doesn't it hurt? The old trope of merit has been thrown about again. And since then, the question has not come up. 10 years later, now again, for the first time, we have an SC judge in the Supreme Court. There has not been an ST judge so far.
Oh, thank you. I've seen Jagdish sir has dropped, maybe definitely a network issue. And we have, I think we can have two more questions. It's already 11:50. So let's go in order. So Nitin, are you there? So we can collect all the three questions, Aditya, and can summarily answer. And if Jagdish joined, then we can have his opinion. Before that, I have a couple of announcements. One is that Ambedkar King Study Circle has circulated a solidarity statement, which will be sent to the HRs to consider the caste as a discriminative class and to be included in the diversity programs and policy framework. So please go and sign. You can find the details in Ambedkar King Study Circle website, that is akcusa.org. Under the intervention, that we have a separate tab for the solidarity statement. And also, please go and read the testimonies that we are collecting about the practice of caste in the USA, which is available in our homepage itself. And also, we encourage you that if you observe a caste practice of caste, it need not be a blatant discrimination, but how the people practice caste in India, in America, if you observe, please fill the Google form so that your story also will be published. And also, I would like to happy to say that one of the high school student in Delaware has gone through this testimony and has written a beautiful blog out of it. So AKC is it looks very promising to AKC that the next generation kids are taking up and talking about the caste. So we have seems a promising future in America. So now let us collect all the three questions. And before that, Venki, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, thanks, Venki. So Venki, I reached Venki when I got Aditya to speak. Then I told him we want a very, very firm guy and very bold person to talk about the concerns of the depressed class people. Venki, without any thought, he told you just to call Jagdish Shah that he will come and enlighten you. So thank you, Venki. So let us have the questions, all the questions. Nitin, Kali, and Ram. So Nitin, can you please ask a question? Okay, so Kali.
Yeah, Karthik, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Okay, okay. So yeah, my question is, see, compared to other states in India, in Tamil Nadu, first of all, specifying, I am belonging to this caste or putting the caste in the last name and all is kind of not, generally visible, right? And that is a big power tool for the suppressed community, equally mingle with other people, and then come up in the society, and then they don't have any discrimination problem even when they were in the young age, right? Even the kid, they don't know. None of me or my friends don't know what caste we are, right? That's how we grow up compared to other states, especially in Tamil Nadu. And that is Periyar's movement, a lot of movements in the local streets, right? That generally developed a good harmony in the society. I'm asking basically because uh, the guest was from Karnataka, and is it if the Periyar kind of a leader is born in other states, this Dalits being burnt live even today's time period, right? Would have that been stopped or reduced, or was there any other leader but that was not enough powerful like Periyar in other states? I generally wanted to understand this part.
Sir, as per may I speak, sir.
So 1 minute. So what we decided, since you dropped, there are 3 questions. We'll collect all the question.
Yes,
So
sir.
you can answer and close because it's already 11:53.
Yeah, it's too late for you, sir. Thank you so much for staying so late to address this.
Because what has happened, I am suffering from the mouth ulcer. I could not able to speak. Still, I am managed to speak.
Very sorry, sir.
The
Very
words
sorry.
are not properly flowing because of the mouth ulcer.
Oh, sorry, sir. Okay.
Okay,
So,
it's okay.
Ram, can you please ask your question?
Hello.
Ram.
My question to both. One of the unique situation for immigrants is here you have a religious protection. As a minority, your religion is protected here. So one of the challenges will be caste can be smuggled under the guise of religion and as a protected category. How that might pose a legal problem when we try to really talk about it, because Hindu can say, oh, this is part of my religion. How they can, so that is a protected category in the US because minority religions are protected. So it's a very unique situation in that way as immigrants. I think it'll be nice to hear what Aditya and Jagdish thinks about this challenge, how this might be raised in the court.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ram. So I know Nitin, I will read out Nitin's question because he's not asking. His question is there a possibility that the caste discrimination can be reduced if economically or financially they improve? As we see in the US, there also exists a big gap economically between blacks and the whites. If they improve financially, will the caste system reduce? Example, they will live in a rich neighborhood. So that is Nitin's question. So either of you can start.
May I answer, sir? Hello?
Yeah, sir. Now you can summarize.
The first thing is, the first president in India, where K.R. Narayanan became the president of India. Hello? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir. We can hear you. Yeah.
K.R. Narayanan, who come from an untouchability community, became the first president of India. All of us are aware. He's the first citizen of India. Okay. When he go back to his native place, he was not allowed to enter the temple. Look at the plight of the president of India. Apart from this, in New York Times in India, they write that the first untouchable president in India. Why? This shows, does it not amount to saying that Indian minds are ingrained with the caste system? We might be socially, we might be educationally, economically forward. When you go back to the people, when we go back to our villages, people see with reference to the caste and what with reference to the status, what we are acquired in this society. Many of our politicians, when you go back to their villages, even now, sir, for your kind information, they were not allowed to enter the temples. Our politicians have become a scapegoat and they have become a servants. Why? Because they're not ascertaining their rights. If they enter into the temple, they feel that they are going to lose their vote bank. When our officers, one IAS officer is called Shriram, when he has gone to his native place, his family members were not allowed to enter into the temple. What would happen for this? Though we are economically strong and we are educationally strong, we are holding the highest post in the society as a secretary. When you go back to his native place, what would be the plight of this man? We're going to answer all this. This shows that Indian minds are ingrained with the caste system. It cannot be wiped out because centuries to come, Buddha, Ramanujacharya, Ambedkar, so many people have fought for the eradication of the untouchability. Nobody was successful. Of course, Ambedkar was successful to some extent, but still it is practicing and it has not been completely vanished in India. Hello?
Yes, sir. So, sir,
Yes,
we
sir.
want to reflect on other questions. The question from Kali is the Tamil Nadu as Periyar, so that the atrocities
sir.
are less.
There is a moment in our Karnataka when Nalodi Krishnaraja Vadayar, who was the social reformer, was the king of Mysore. The first reservation in appointment, an anti-Brahminical movement was started somewhere in 1919 in our Karnataka state. Earlier, most of the vacancies, the government service and the posts were held by the Iyengaris of Madras. Because in Madras, in Karnataka, most of the divans were Iyengar from the Madras. Then, when the non-Brahminical movement has started in Karnataka, Maharaja of Mysore realized that. He constituted a committee called Miller, Justice Miller, who was the Chief Justice of our Mysore. He gave a beautiful report stating that most of the vacancies which has been earmarked for the, most of the government post has been hit away by the Brahmins community, though their population is 3%. Then they started entertaining the rights for the other community people. Maharaja took a bold decision to distribute the vacancies or distribute the wealth of the state government to all the backward classes and the SC/STs. Because of this, the so-called Diwan, our Mysore Diwan, Mr. Sir M. Visvesvaraya, who is known for his engineering technology, he was threatened the state government that he would going to step down from the post of a Diwan if he provide a reservation to the SC/STs and the backward class. Maharaj didn't hesitate. He said, wait for some time. After some time, I asked the Diwan of Mysore, Mr. Sir M. Visvesvaraya, to step down from the post. There is a revolutionary in Karnataka state. There are number of DSS associations in our Karnataka state. Still, it has not come down. There are cases where the atrocities has occurred even today. Notwithstanding the fact that the Periyar movement in state government in the Karnataka state, they have adopted the Periyar movement. And as also as the other movement like in Kerala, what is the name from a backward class man? I can't able to recollect his name. A backward class person whose movement we have also adopted. Still, the degree of atrocities is not come down to zero. There are some cases where in the villages, the people of the untouchable people we are boycotted from the caste Hindus. Our state government missionaries, they don't act quickly to find out a solution for that. Still, there are ongoing atrocities on the SC/STs.
Yeah. So yeah, the Professor Ram also has, but Aditya, you can cover. Aditya,
Yeah,
can you?
so the two questions, that one was about whether caste will creep in because religion is a protected class, and will the Hindus take advantage of it? Will they take advantage of it? Yes, very much, because that's always been their strategy. I think we've seen that even in the California textbook cases, where they've tried to take advantage with the aura of religion that comes behind caste. And I think because of this danger that is always there, and it is important, as we were discussing in the previous sessions, in which I think a couple of weeks back in the same group, that in the Cisco case specifically, it will be important to have a strong coordination committee so that amicus briefs can be filed to, to actually to actually have testimonies, reports on record to show how these attempts are going to be made in the name of justifying caste through the route of religious practices. And that danger is very, very real. And I was in fact attending one talk on, someone was speaking on Ambedkar a couple of weeks back, I think around Ambedkar Jayanti, and this was organized by a Hindu right-wing group, and they wanted to speak on Ambedkar. And they had also, and this is also, this group functions out of the USA. And they had tried, and one of the questions they asked the panelists there is that, didn't Ambedkar finally give up on his understanding that Hinduism was a root cause for caste? And their narrative has consistently been, and it's a white lie, and I was surprised that they could say it so confidently. And the ridiculous reason that I heard is that finally Ambedkar accepted that caste is good for the organization of society. And that is the reason when finally under the constitution, provision had to be made for the various religions, he ensured that Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs and Hindus are treated as Hindus, because though he had converted into Buddhism, he realized that the virtues of Hinduism was still alive. So he had changed his mind after writing Annihilation of Caste. So don't be surprised if they take this route to try and justify their stand. And I think that's the reason, strategically, only for the Cisco litigation, it is important to have these amicus briefs there. On the point of the economic, whether economic upliftment will somehow overcome the caste so-called backwardness, I don't have a fully informed answer, but I've read a very interesting paper on this. An experiment was conducted for matrimonial in matrimonial relations. So the experiment was this: they would put up fake advertisements in a newspaper saying that I am upper caste with a low salary. Similarly, they would put another ad saying I am upper caste with mid-level salary, and I am upper caste with high salary. Similarly, they would put up advertisements saying that I am X oppressed class with a low salary, X oppressed caste with a mid-level salary, and X oppressed caste with extremely high salary, higher than the Brahmin caste salary. They put up an ad saying that 10 times that. And they try to see how the responses come from the various prospective brides. And when they finally analyzed all the data, they found that no matter how much you increase, if a Brahmin's salary goes up, the number of proposals he gets is increasing. Similarly, the so-called depressed class who put up an ad, with his increase in salary, the number of proposals he gets does not increase. And the only marker in which the number of proposals, suddenly you saw some little graph change to show the number of increase, when it increased by a factor of 10 or something, where someone became a billionaire of some sort, then by projection you can say maybe somewhere your caste identity is being masked. But beyond that, the data that they analyzed showed that no matter how much the economic capacity is increasing, the desirability of a so-called depressed caste person, no matter how much he earns, does not escape the caste background. So I found this study very interesting, and I think I will restrict my answer also to that study because I think there is data to back it up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think we have a lot of questions, but we have to end this session because of already 12:06, and in India it's next Sunday morning 12:30. So thank you very much, Mr. Aditya, and thank you very much, Advocate Mr. Jagdish. People will be asking a lot of questions, so when I have a question, that I will send you a WhatsApp or email.
Please,
So that
sir,
you
please. Sir.
And thank you very much. So if you want to say final words from Aditya and Mr. Jagdish, that we can have and close the call. Thank you everyone for attending patiently for 2 hours. Thank you very much. You have anything you can say and close?
It's a very heartfelt thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, my heartfelt thanks to all of you. Because of my mouth ulcer, the words are not flowing so properly. Somehow I'm managing and speaking. Sorry for the inconvenience which has been caused by me. I could not able to speak properly because of the severe mouth ulcer. Somehow I am managing to speak. And the next occasion when you arrange the meeting, definitely I will deliver the course properly. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome one. We are very happy. We are very privileged to listen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Have a good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.